BC United leader Kevin Falcon says Banman's departure was not entirely unexpected and says it betrays Banman's Abbotsford constituents.
Bruce was a bit of a management challenge for us on an ongoing basis. John Rustad can enjoy that as they go forward together.
Welcome back to This is VANCOLOUR. The provincial riding of Abbotsford South is interesting. The last three MLAs representing the riding were all elected as BC Liberals, which is now rebranded as BC United, only to leave the party. This includes the current MLA for Abbotsford South and our featured guest tonight, the former mayor of Abbotsford who left BC United to join the BC Conservatives, giving the party official party status in the BC legislature. He's Bruce Banman. Bruce, thanks so much for being here tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me, and I hope it's not the last, and I hope it's hope to see you many more times after this.
Let's talk afterwards and figure that out. But I got to ask you right off the bat, did the BC Liberals, now BC United, did they dupe you?
No, they didn't dupe me. What's happened is that things changed after the leadership race, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And basically, I was unable to bring my voice the way I wanted on behalf of those who elected me and bring their interests to the table. And in order for you to understand that, Mo, you'd have to understand where I came from. So my grandparents were Russian Mennonites that escaped the Russian Revolution. My grandfather was the treasurer/secretary of the village they were in, and he would have been the first that was either tortured or shot. Wow. So they grabbed what they could. And they were not alone. Canada's done this, many, many, many times over for people who are in peril. Mm-hmm. They grabbed what they could, including my aunt who was in diapers, and basically escaped to Canada.
Wow.
And what was impressed upon me as a child was they had this sense of appreciation that Canada opened up its arms, allowed them to worship the way they saw fit, allowed them to instill the values they thought were important to their children. But most importantly, they were able to put that little mark beside the candidate they wanted and had the freedom to say what was on their mind without fear of going to jail or reprisal or worse. So for me, this thing called democracy and freedom of speech is personal and it runs pretty deep.
But when we talk about your constituents, didn't they actually elect a BC Liberal or BC United candidate? That's the case that Kevin Falcon is making, that you're actually betraying your constituents because you're supposed to be representing this party.
Well, first off, that party doesn't exist anymore because it got its name changed. And I would say...
So it's a blank slate just because of a rebrand?
Well, that's all part of it. Yeah. I think, but the real betrayal was actually on behalf of Kevin. Let's put it where it belongs. I was told how to vote. And at one point, there was a vote that happened. I was told, if you are not in favor of this vote, you leave the building when it happens.
Wow.
And I was humiliated. And I kept going over, it sounds corny, but I kept going over in my head what my grandparents have thought. I wished I could have a redo on that. I would have stood up and voted my conscience and taken whatever whooping was coming me in caucus the next day. It was wrong. And I just, that was the real beginning. And then it was always of what you could or could not say. And to think that all of British Columbia has the same views on everything when it's as diverse a province as we have is ridiculous, to say the least.
And I can understand that you are following your conscience in terms of joining the BC Conservatives, but the annual pay raise you're enjoying of $11 grand per year must be kind of a nice bonus.
There was no guarantee that was going to happen. That didn't exist. So that wasn't part of the decision at all.
Okay.
The decision was, I need to speak on behalf of my constituents and the values that they have who elected me.
Okay.
Democracy is precious. And what was happening time and time again was I was finding it increasingly difficult to do so. And I just could not sit with that. I didn't have a fight with the leader. I had a fight with the fact of the micro control of what one is allowed to say.
Bruce, I need you to convince me that the BC Conservatives are not a fringe party. And the reason I bring this up is that in the last month, you've come out on CBC questioning the role of carbon dioxide in climate change. your party has come out saying that they would get rid of SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity curriculum in schools. Now, I can understand that this speaks to some British Columbians, but certainly when you look at Metro Vancouver, Victoria region, this is not speaking to the general consensus of British Columbians, and certainly I would argue not enough ridings or votes that you would need to form government. So I'm kind of struggling with this idea of what this party is aiming for, aside from sticking it to Kevin Falcon and BC United.
Well, Mo, first off, you just heard Mario say that it is, if you consider 1 out of 5 British Columbians a fringe, I would say that, in all due respect, this is what media does. They use labels, they use terms, and it really is dismissive of what 1 out of 5 British Columbians think is important. And that number is growing. That number is growing. If you take a look at the trend, the other parties are on the way down and we are on the way up, because British Columbians are sick and tired of this follow whatever the leader says. John has said that we will have free votes in the legislature and the ability to speak on behalf of those who elected us. That is nothing more than a fresh breath of air in British Columbia politics, because that is not politics as normal. What that is actually representing those who voted for you and put their trust in you.
Right.
And I just think that you are going to see an awakening in British Columbia. This trend is growing. It's growing actually not just in British Columbia, but I believe across the country.
I guess I just bring those 2 examples up because they seem to be even a step further than the federal Conservatives have taken.
Well, if you want a fringe, I don't know if you heard what was said by the woman that was in the anti-protest group that basically called police. She called them ugly. She called them children haters. She called them killers.
But she wasn't running for office.
That doesn't matter if they're running for office.
I mean, I would hold you to a different standard than
well, okay, let's hold the NDP at standard. They were more than willing to basically, as rightfully so, express their condolences to with regards to Constable O'Brien. But where was the outrage of what she said? Where was the condemnation by them? Not only them, but how about CUPE? And we'll toss in the BC Teachers Federation as well.
They're responsible for those unions and activists?
The language should have been condoned or condemned.
Okay.
And so, I'll ask you, do you condemn that kind of language or do you condone it?
I would have to see the clip that you're talking about, so I'm not too sure. But the reality is it's a hard position to put anyone to condemn anything that someone has said wrong. I'm talking about things that you've said, things that your party stand for that seem to be out of step with mainstream political parties, including the federal Conservatives.
Well, that doesn't mean that the
about.
mainstream political parties are necessarily on the pulse of the public. I guess we'll find out come election day.
I'm sure we will,
whether or not that, and what I've said, to be clear, is I need more information. And furthermore, I don't think it's bad to necessarily question. And here's another thing that bothers me. If someone questions anything, the media jumps quick to label them as extremists or fringe or haters.
I'm asking you to convince me otherwise. I haven't labeled you as anything. Really quickly, though, are there more to follow you from BC United to the BC Conservatives? Can we expect more?
I think as the numbers come out, I would not be surprised. I am not the only one within that party that was feeling muzzled and sidelined. It would not surprise me if there are more. But I'll tell you, it takes a lot of courage to cross the floor.
Absolutely. Bruce, I got to cut you off there. I'm so sorry. First of all, love the jacket. Thank you for wearing the colors. Mo. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Folks, that's the BC Conservative House Leader and MLA for Abbotsford South, Bruce Banman. So much gratitude to him for taking the time tonight and taking my tough questions. Now, after some business, if our federal government and national media paid more attention to British Columbia, maybe the entire country would be better off. I'll explain up next.